Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place. We have a fantastic episode on mindful dating.
What a great approach to a very common human activity.
So dating is a common human activity, and specifically, dating, people may be dating at all sorts of phases of their life, but also if you're non-monogamous, and if you weren't non-monogamous your whole life, you may have spent a whole bunch of time being monogamous and just not dating, which means a lot of people who come into my world all of a sudden are like, "Ooh, I haven't dated in 25 years."
Out of practice.
Out of practice, but also the entire world changed in that time. And so now dating looks different.
Out of practice, and the practice doesn't really apply.
And then on top of that, what if you're not out, like in your community? Or how do I meet people? I mean, you have been such a dating block for me at times. Like we've gone through whole periods of time where I'm like, I'm trying to date. And just because by the virtue of you standing nearby, I can't figure out how to meet people like in real life, even though I can feel that there's a connection, I can feel there's a flirtation, but everybody assumes the default of monogamy. So let's face it, online dating is pretty much standard these days. And we have a fantastic guest who's talking not just about online dating, but who has some fantastic solutions for taking dating from being a chore and something a lot of people are like frustrated that they even have to do to making it really, I mean, dare I say, a spiritual practice of
Marie has
like a mindful practice.
A whole lot of great ideas on how to make it an enjoyable part of your life that enhances your life rather than a chore that is just like you're trying to slog through to go meet people.
Right.
Very different approach to it. And I mean, I was inspired just listening to her.
Right. And when I shifted my own dating to be more in alignment with the mindful dating practices, I noticed an immediate shift in who responded to me and how my dates went. Obviously, correlation is not causation, but it literally happened within like a couple of weeks. Like, boom, things shifted. So, I mean, I'm just one example, but here it is. I would take Marie's words to heart if I were you. And also, I just wanted to mention that Marie makes a great offer toward the end. If you stick around toward the very end of this podcast, Marie has a wonderful offer. If you are in the dating game, if you are looking to up your dating game, you're going to want to take advantage of the offer Marie has for you at the end. So, Ken, would you introduce our lovely guest?
Dr. Marie Thouin is the founder of Love Insight, Love Insight dash
dating.com.
Dating.com. Mindful dating and relationship coaching practice, where she supports people of all ages, genders, sexual and relationship orientations in navigating the path of intimate love. Marie is passionate about intentional and non-traditional relationship structures and the intersection of love, sexuality, and freedom. She completed her Ph.D. research on the experience of compersion in consensually non-monogamous relationships at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And I know you've had lovely conversations with her about that.
We do enjoy our jealousy compersion overlap.
And she discusses that at whatiscompersion.com. She also serves as editor at the International Journal of Transpersonal Studies, a leading peer-reviewed publication in the field of whole person psychologies.
Yeah.
And is just a wonderful person to talk to.
A wonderful person to talk to. And let's just say, no matter what you think of dating now, or whether you even think you're in the dating market, I think this is a great episode to listen to because a lot of us know people who are dating too. I have a whole bunch of teenagers, even just going through and listening to this and thinking about how I can update my own operating system around what dating is. That is also a communal upgrade. Right. So even if you are currently not dating, this might be an episode for you. I would give it a whirl. Hi, Marie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, it's so good to be here.
It is genuinely always a pleasure to be in any space with you. And I value our relationship so much. Thank you for joining us to talk about a topic that I don't think Ken and I talk about nearly enough, and you are an expert in. Let's talk about dating.
Woohoo! My favorite topic.
Hey, see, I love this because one, I think a lot of people don't really love dating. So I love that you love it. But
Mhm.
also, I know that you've put a lot of thought into it. You don't just love dating because you happen to love it. So tell us a little bit about why. Like, why dating for you?
Yeah. Well, really, dating, I think, is a huge window into our souls as human beings. We get to experience so many emotions, so many thoughts, so many behaviors. To me, dating can be this huge study
Mm, that's
in
fantastic.
humanity. Yes.
Well, I'm here for that. So I
When
know
you
I'm
put it
sitting,
like that sounds really good. That
right?
sounds better than what I've been doing.
Well, that's kind of the thing though. I think we not all of us like dating in part because we don't have that sort of worldview on it. So, what do you see people when people come to you and they're like struggling with dating? What are their struggles? Why don't they love it? Why don't they feel the way you do?
Mhm. Well, typically they have a very precise outcome in mind, and that outcome has not arrived. And typically it is, related to a version or the other of the relationship escalator. They want to meet that person who is going to be their one person, the
Yeah.
person to fulfill all of their emotional needs, etc. And they feel stuck. They feel that every outcome besides that one outcome is a failure and a
Mm,
reflection on either themselves as a person or a reflection on the other gender or whatever gender they are dating or the world as a whole. It can become this existential crisis of sorts because of course we want to love, we want to connect intimately, we want to partner. It is in our DNA. And when we feel that the way to achieve that very primal goal is not working for us, then you know life is not working.
right. And so we'll look for anything to pin it on. And not just the person we're dating, not just us, but also like, yeah, just like blame. Blame someone for this not going the way I meant for it to.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because that doesn't even have to be connected to the relationship escalator. I'm thinking about the times I've gone on dates and it hasn't gone the way I wanted it to. And yeah, the existential crisis is right there. And
Mhm.
that's not as much fun as not having an existential crisis while meeting someone.
It's true. So let's quick define the relationship escalator for
Hmm.
people in case it's the first time they're hearing it. Marie, would you just give us your how you talk about the relationship escalator?
Sure, sure. So it's the idea that there is one default way to partner, and it starts with, boy meets girl, they go on a date, they kiss, they start making love, they become exclusive, they talk about marriage, they move in together, they marry, they have children, they have careers together, they have grandchildren, and they move to Florida.
And they moved to Florida.
There's this progression of things that
Well, when you put
happens.
it that way, now I definitely don't want it because I never want to move to Florida. So even if I wanted it for other reasons, I'm not doing it for
Mm,
that.
uh-huh. You get off before the last step,
Yeah.
at least.
So the relationship escalator though also happens for people who are non-monogamous. There's another way we see that play out for people who are they're open to multiple relationships, but still there's this sense that relationships should follow a natural progression of intensity, right? Like
Mhm,
if let's say it's not going to follow that particular escalation because maybe I'm not going to own two houses and have two families of children, but there can be this point of, well, yes, but we've been together this long and so we should now be staying over at each other's houses and we should now be going on vacations together and we should now and whatever has should
mhm,
near it
mhm, mhm,
feels to me like it's probably being impacted by that relationship escalator, and I don't in any way want to claim that this doesn't affect me. It
mhm,
totally does. Like I catch
mhm,
myself doing it all the time where I'm like, Right. We don't have to do that. So do you encourage people to get to like detach then from the idea of the relationship escalator?
Well, I encourage people to become more in touch with what they truly, truly want. And if what they truly, truly want from an authentic place is a version of this relationship escalator, then okay. But let's start with an analysis of who you really are and what you truly want from life, what you truly want from relationships, what are the inherited beliefs and values that you have acquired and kind of assimilated that might be serving you versus not serving you. So let's start with authenticity and date from that place rather than a place of shoulds and defaults and assumptions.
Okay, I love that because it's such a both and
Yeah.
answer, right? Yep, you might actually want the relationship escalator, whether that's monogamous or non-monogamous, but we want to choose it with clarity and intentionality and referring back to that, like, who am I and what do I actually want? And that is no easy task.
Yeah.
But I can see why now you're like, oh, because this is an adventure of becoming
Yep. It's
you
kind of an existential crisis either way.
in a good way.
But
In
the thing
a
is,
good way.
well, the thing is, it is a crisis if it's not what you planned and something else happens. But if you set out with a purpose, with an eye to explore and find out, now whatever happens is that, instead of tripping over missed expectations and the shoulds that you were
Shoulds.
mentioning.
Right, right. And I love that you use the word or the phrase process of becoming, Jolie.
Mm-hmm.
And that describes my philosophy of dating, really. Dating not being simply a means to an end, but also a process of transformation that brings you closer to yourself and
Mm.
closer to what you truly want from life.
Yeah. So for me, everything we talk about on this podcast winds up touching into the individuation process, which, so to me, what you're describing is dating done in service to one's individuation experience. And I'll just remind listeners, like, individuation is not the same as individualism. It's not prioritizing you over all others. And it's also not the same as differentiation, which is just about noticing that I am different from others. I'm separate. Individuation is this process of becoming. And so I'm hearing that mindful dating, which is the term I only ever heard from you, mindful dating could really be in service to one's individuation experience.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I love that so much. Dating as an individuation process. Yeah.
Right.
Spot
So
on.
how did you come to this place of describing it as mindful dating? Because I love that concept. And I feel like it sounds really good, but then when I actually go to think about in my own dating, okay, what is that? Wait a minute, what is it? Tell us more.
Sure, sure. So I use the term mindful because mindfulness, of course, might mean different things to different people, but in essence, it means being really present. It means being really present to ourselves, to what is going on inside of us, and to what is going on outside of us as well. And I use that term to distinguish, my version, my philosophy of dating from the more mainstream philosophy of dating, which is to mold yourself just right so that you can get the outcome you want, so that you can get the results you want from the other person. I think that a lot of mainstream dating advice is about how to get the guy, how to get the gal, how to basically manipulate a situation to an end that you've decided, and oftentimes those ends are not even truly conscious. We want to feel attractive, we want to get the status, we want to get all of these
Want to
points
get
of
laid.
validation. Yeah, we want to get laid, of course. Nothing wrong with that. But we tend to gamify this dating process as like a win-lose um, game that is based on those kind of unconscious values and scripts that we've acquired. So bringing mindfulness into that, bringing presence, bringing like, okay, why am I actually doing this? First of
Yeah.
all, and how am I showing up? How do I want to show up? Who is really this person in front of me besides, someone who might tick boxes on my list? How can I really connect from a place of presence and authenticity and true intimacy?
Right.
Because this is really about connection, and that's what we're all craving.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. In fact, there's nothing in what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, there's nothing there that says that you couldn't be dating primarily looking for short-term hookup connections. It would be about being clear that that's what you're looking for, and not just setting out to check off boxes or notch a belt, but also to be really honest with the people you're connecting with, and to do that from a place of love for humanity, love for the individuals you're connecting with. You don't have to be in love to act love, to be love. And I've gone through phases like that in my dating where I'm like, "Oh, you know what? I'm not actually emotionally available for like long-term relationships, but I also don't at all care for being flippant with people." I like
Mhm.
it doesn't fit me, and I have often felt like I didn't fit anywhere in the dating scene because I'm like, "No, no, no, I want to know you, and yet I'm mostly out here right now for sex. I'm mostly like that's the connection that I'm looking for, but it's not because I don't wanna know you, I do. I'm just being honest about, like, what the level that this can go to." So, I'm hearing that that is not actually antithetical to the mindful dating process, but that it could really easily slip into shadow, right? Like, I could really easily be just
Mhm.
acting out my shadow instead of doing my shadow work, right?
Yes,
Be
yes.
so easy. You must
Mhm.
see stories like this all the time.
Right, right, of course. And I love that you brought love into this picture, because I think that loving kindness, as a Buddhist principle, or just as a way to live with an open heart and care for other people, is integral to that mindful dating process that I teach.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, actually, like, I might be able to talk about those 4 steps that I talk about when I talk about mindful swiping, specifically online,
Ooh,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because that's a place where people tend to be so, like, to lack presence. Like, we see a screen, we gamify things, we gamify people, and then we go into our shadow, or into our automatic behaviors, right?
right.
And the way that I talk about how to, use this process to not only do our shadow work, but really bring a lot of presence and consciousness, is one, um, ritualize your use of mindful, of dating apps, ritualize your use
Mm,
of online dating. And instead of just, like, swiping mindlessly when you're at the grocery store, or when you're, I don't know, in the bathroom, or just kind of like anywhere and everywhere when you're waking up in the morning, create a container for your use of the apps,
yeah.
and be really present. You might want to light a candle, put a little bit of music, or, like, create a space and a container that honors the sacredness of what you're trying to create,
Right.
which
Oh,
is connection in whatever way that, manifest for you.
that makes a lot of sense. And in those moments, so you start being mindful before you ever even start interacting with anybody else. So
Mhm.
now you're mindful of your connection to yourself, which is what you've been talking about with the shadow
Right.
and I hear, so I'm picturing this. Okay, so I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to be, as authentic as I can, figure out who I am, what I want, and I'm going to put myself out into um and going to start experimenting with connection. What happens when I'm the only one doing that? Like, it is such a game. I mean, I think we know it as you're talking
The
about
apps
gamifying.
gamified
The
it.
apps
Yeah.
gamified it, and I mean, I think it was a game anyway. Where I mean, I remember pre app dating. Um, I was trying to. I mean, I'm a people pleaser anyway, but I'm trying to figure out. So, what are people looking for? Well, let me try to see if I can, lean into those qualities of me and present those. And what I hear you talking about is kind of just saying, well, here's me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And what happens? What's it? What can I expect when I do that to the, strangers?
Right, right. Well, of course, that is going to be a great filter for people who either really resonate with the
Okay.
true you
Yeah.
that you're putting out there, or people who don't. So you might actually experience even more rejection or even more, like, life left swipes than before. But the people who swipe right on you, who say yes to you, who really resonate with who you are gonna be authentic connections. So
Yeah.
in that sense, you're creating a bigger magnet for who you really are and what you truly want.
I think it's such a timely conversation for you, Ken, because you're I've watched him do the app dating, and yeah, your people pleasing tendencies, your
Yeah.
desire to make sure other people feel comfortable with your presentation, it overwhelms the showing how weird and unusual and perfect you are in your imperfectness, and that doesn't actually attract who you want, and you
Right.
struggle with app dating. You struggle a whole bunch. For a conventionally attractive human, you struggle a lot more than would seem necessary, but I think it's because of that. It lacks a level of authentic weirdness. Like, I know I click on people who are being authentically their weird self.
Mhm.
Like, they're just being
And so do I.
them,
Yeah. So
right?
that's
But
interesting.
then you struggle to do it,
And
to
so
be
this is
it.
the third time this has come up this week, and you
Uh-oh.
talked about gamifying game theory. You can date not to lose, to not be rejected,
Mhm.
or you can date to win, to actually find people who are attracted for you as you.
Mm.
And I've definitely spent most of my life playing not to lose. I don't want to
Mm.
bother anybody. I don't want to make anybody be mad at me. Versus, so who's out there who's into whatever this disaster is?
Right. I mean, that's exactly it. And
Yeah.
that was totally my experience of dating apps for several years. Was I was not actually being my authentic self. And when the more I dial that in, the easier the app game is. Like, it's still a game, but it is
Mhm.
easier. I want to draw attention to the fact the use of ritual, right?
Oh,
Because you
yeah.
said, well, what
Yes.
happens if I go out and I'm doing this and I'm being cautious and mindful, but other people aren't? And I just want to make a suggestion out there for the AI bots that are going to take over our world at some point. That wouldn't it be funny if all humans had to tell each other where they swiped right on each other? Okay, don't do
Wow.
that to us. To my robot overlords, don't do that to us. I don't actually want it to happen, but I think it would be really funny. Like, I was at my mother-in-law's. No. I was in the, I mean, we so many bathroom swipes. There would be so many bathroom swipes. Like, who wants that to be your meeting story, right?
Introduce the Turing test to app dating.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we should do this, but I think it would be really, really
That's
funny.
funny.
It would be a very fun first date question, actually.
Yeah. Like, I feel like we could get some very interesting answers. And in the non-monogamous world, I think a lot of us swipe side by side.
Right.
Like we said, Ken and I often swipe while we happen to be like hanging out together. Like, it'll be part of a date evening, even. It will just be like, oh yeah, let's spend
Yeah, we've
time
done that.
side by side. Like, well, I mean, we just last week we spent like half a day, like off and on apps.
Mm.
And that felt good to me because it also reminds me to be my full self. Like,
Mhm.
I was already in a relational mindset versus a game mindset, a win mindset.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The word that comes to mind there is integration.
Yeah.
You're not kind of, separating your different parts or the different parts of your life and saying like, okay, I have my husband over here and then I'm gonna swipe over there and these things cannot meet.
Oh
You're
yeah.
saying like,
When
Oh,
I started
no,
with the
this
apps, it
can.
was very compartmentalized.
yep.
Yeah.
Guilty swiping, especially in
Mm.
non-monogamy. So fascinating. Okay, first off, if you're
Mm.
cheating, stop that. Let's have a conversation. Come to a salon. Let's talk. But that's a different thing. Let's assume you're on the up and up. You've made clear agreements, but I see people all the time who are like super unable to allow their worlds to overlap and to be one thing. And I think the longer it goes on, the more I see people struggle with integrating then dating. So like, there's swiping and then there's the dating. So if you're struggling to swipe where your partner, I mean, I'm not saying like mindlessly swiping while you're supposed to be on a date with them. Like, I like this
Mhm,
ritual
mhm.
container idea. Like we're doing this
Right.
right now because it's
Yes.
actually fun for us and we're sharing.
Mhm.
And that then could lead into more generative conversations about what are you looking for out there and how are you meeting the world? What is this? Why are you dating? Why am I dating? Because we're not dating for the same reasons.
Mhm,
So it could be
mhm.
really generative.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really loving that. But you said there were 4 steps, and that
Yes.
must just be one.
Yeah,
Ritualize
the
your
ritualize, yes, was the first one. Then it's about creating an authentic dating profile.
oh,
And
yeah.
I love helping people with this in my coaching practice. We look at their photos, we look at what they wrote, and we really ask, like, does this portray your authentic self?
Yeah.
Is this the vibe you want to give? Just kind of looking at the whole profile as a whole and, looking at the places where they might be hiding certain things because they're afraid of rejection. And I'm not saying you need to put your whole life story in many details on your dating profile, but you want to really come from a place of sharing your whole self. And
Yeah.
that's also what creates a big magnet, and that's what makes you feel really aligned as you go out in the dating world. You know that you're putting your best foot forward, not in a way where you're like hiding your shadow and hiding the things that are not that you're afraid to be rejected on, but you're really saying like, hey, this is my whole self. This is who I am. This is what I want. I'm owning it.
Yeah. That that to me reads like it reads so much better than a too tightly curated profile because that can almost feel mechanistic. Yeah, it doesn't land. On the other hand, you got to put something in there. Those profiles that have like two lines of something in there, like I don't care how authentic it is, if it's 2 lines and a half a picture, it's just not enough. Like I it's like seeing somebody through, too much filter. I can't see anything. I need to get
Mhm.
enough of them. I love that you do that actual act with people because I know it's stressful for a lot of people to
Right,
Yeah,
right.
create their
that
profile.
sounds like a challenge. How do you approach somebody like to how does I'm thinking about my own profile and how I felt when I wrote it, and I was totally thinking about the game and not the people that were out there.
Hmm,
Um,
hmm.
how do you help people get past that?
Um, well, I mean, honestly, there is so much more successful people who use the authentic um, approach that actually do meet their partner. So usually it leads you to better results.
Hmm.
It's one of those
Okay.
counterintuitive things where you might think like, oh, if I don't play the game, I'm not going to get the results that I want. And you might get less swipes, you might get less matches, but the matches you get are higher quality.
Hmm.
Mm,
And people can really see the change as they become more authentic. So if you try it, you'll probably see results pretty quickly in the quality of the matches that you create.
Sounds
okay.
great.
I think I'll have to make an appointment for Ken with you, Marie, because I say it like as a gift because I can see him already like, oh gosh, I should definitely take part in this process.
Well, it sounds very, I appreciate that you're helping people do that because like I said, I'm thinking about myself when I worked on my profiles, and I can know that there's a better way to do it for my goals and still have trouble getting out of that mindset while
Mhm.
well, I mean, ritual. I pick up my phone, open up the app. I've already performed a ritual that puts me in the mindset that I was in the last time I did it, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm. Right.
Okay. That's so ritualize and then
Ritualize.
get your authentic actual self
Mhm.
onto your profile. What are the other steps?
The other one would be to practice discernment. And then that means like when you're swiping to really also be present to the other person. And I'll add also loving kindness in that
Mm,
box. So discernment and loving kindness at the same time, being really discerning about what comes up for you. As you look at somebody's profile and pictures and you read what they wrote, the ability to read between the lines, um, look at their profile and really sense like who might they be as a person, and does that vibe make me feel inspired, safe, happy, connected, or at least intrigued and curious.
Yeah.
And if yes, then great, you can swipe right. And if no, then you can bring some loving kindness in that no. You don't have to, just mindlessly be like, ugh, and swipe left.
Right.
Because ultimately, we're all in the same boat. We're all looking for love and
Right.
connection. And the more kindness we can bring into that quote unquote game, into that activity, the better we will feel. And then we're also putting love into the dating pool, which needs it a lot. And I think that also contributes to us being more magnetic and more relational and more easy to approach. Just kind of that general attitude of loving kindness as we're doing it.
I love the idea of, honestly, correct me if you don't think this is the way to go, but I'm now just thinking about every left swipe could literally be a really, like, watching the tone in my voice. No, thank you. Like, but no, thank you said with a really gentle tone, even that, like, no, thank you. That's like so different than that. Exactly.
That's
That
nice. Yeah.
face with that, like, or ugh,
Mm-hmm.
or I can't believe there's,
Right.
right. Like, I taught my children to say no thank you to food that was offered to them that they didn't want because somebody had offered it with love, even if it was cabbage that they didn't want to eat. I asked them to say that. So I'm thinking no thank you. And it's also bringing up the idea of the no thank you helping, because dating is a place. So in our house when I was a kid, you had to try a bite of everything. But with dating,
Yeah.
you don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. We get to release people. That is the upside of the app, right? We don't actually have to just say yes to everything, because that sounds like it's coming from a very scarcity, like there's not enough and I need to scramble and say yes to everything
So that
place.
sounds like the discernment that Marie was mentioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love bringing that into concert. So discernment
Yep.
and loving kindness together. That sounds like it will take your ritual swiping sessions really into a place of yeah, like a spiritual place really,
Mhm.
which I know is
Mm-hmm.
not an uncomfortable conversation for you, but I don't think many people are thinking about dating as a spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And spiritual is one of those loaded words that mean different things to many people. So, yes, for me, I totally like to call it a spiritual practice. And what I mean by spirituality is the ability to expand our consciousness.
Yeah.
That's kind of the only thing it means. And that, with consciousness, I also include expanding our heart and our ability to love and to show up with presence and connection. So,
Yeah.
yes, everything we do in our dating world, in our dating activities, can lead to that expansion of consciousness.
Mhm. Okay. So clearly mindful dating has something to add to our experience. And it's occurring to me right now that there are apps now for friendship as well. So like this, I know I struggle far more with my friendship dating, as it were, than my romantic dating. And I'm just thinking about like, oh, I can approach that same thing. I can keep turning myself, returning to these practices of, oh, this can be for my spiritual growth. This can be for my individuation, to be in this process mindfully, consciously, and expansively. And rather than coming at it from a, yeah, like I don't want to lose
Yeah.
perspective. I appreciate
Right,
that.
right, absolutely. Yeah. And then, like to close the loop here, the fourth pillar of mindful dating, and we can apply it to mindful swiping online or any kind of dating really, will be to learn to be present with our emotions as they arise. And that's where I think the shadow work can come in, because some of these emotions are not going to be positive, pleasant, pleasurable emotions.
Right.
And rejection is a big part of that. There's
Right.
no way to date really without experiencing rejection. And
Right.
that's a really hard one for many, many of us.
Right. So bringing us face to face with the part that can't bear to not be chosen,
Mhm.
the part that can't stand the idea that we would be judged. But I'm also hearing how it could be, there's the shadow of doing the thing, of rejecting, of
Yeah.
not wanting to be a clear no for someone, which is not kind. If you're a no and you give a soft yes, like
Mhm.
That is not
that is
kind. Yeah,
not kind. I
you're
have
right.
been on those
Mhm.
dates. That is not fun because you get about halfway through whatever you're doing and you're like, this person does not want to be sharing their time with me.
Mhm.
This is not fun. I don't like this. And nothing would have been kinder than for them to do that shadow work of, oh, I'm actually a clear no here. I'm a clear
Mhm.
no. And I'm
Mhm.
gonna give that. And I would even say, honestly, even in the middle of a date, personally, I would rather somebody
Mm.
say, wow, I'm not like, yeah, I'm a full no. And no, like, I don't mean get up and storm out of a restaurant. I mean like a polite, kind,
That
like
doesn't sound kind.
instead of, but instead of having sex with me, like,
Mhm.
do the
Mhm.
kind thing and say, "Yeah, I'm actually a no. I'm a no." And that's fine. Or instead of, like, scheduling the next date at the end just because, like, you don't wanna say the hard thing, just say,
Mhm.
"Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll take some time to think about it and we'll talk." And then after you've thought about it, let yourself give that no. Because 'cause I'm feeling so much I feel a lot of resonance there on the idea of, like, being yourself, like, truly being yourself on all sides of that, on all the
Yeah.
sides of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. And that's something that I teach people a lot about when I coach them is how to deliver a no with connection and authenticity and kindness and clarity
Yeah.
as an act of love, as an act of self-love, and also to make your dating life a lot easier. Because if you approach dating with that fear of, I cannot say no to someone, it's the scariest thing for me to reject someone else, then dating will become this struggle and you don't want to even risk, going on dates or getting emotionally involved because you don't want to go through that really painful experience of having to say no. So, sometimes I help people even with scripts and role plays, like, okay, like let's practice you telling me you don't want to go on a second date and
Yeah.
do it in a way that doesn't just provoke your highest form of anxiety, but kind of staying with yourself, staying in your heart, and being able to say, like, I really appreciated the time we spent together. Thank you so much for giving me that time, that attention, that presence. I'm not feeling a yes right now to a second date, or I'm actually not feeling like going on another date with you, but I wish you the very best. It's been such a pleasure, to be able to communicate in a way that feels sincere, loving, connected. And of course, that's in a case where there hasn't been, anything abusive or rude, or,
Right.
there's situations where you might not want to be that kind and complimentary. Of course, sometimes you just need to get the fuck out and just
Sometimes you need
say,
the
like,
hard no.
no.
Mhm.
You need
A
a
hard, quick
harder no.
no.
Yes, but in most cases, it's possible to be really kind and connected, and it's going to make you feel so much better. It's going to make the other person feel a lot better, and it, gives people hope for authenticity.
Right.
I'm hearing a lot of things that sound like they apply to like early dating, like first meeting
Mhm.
people. And so as dating goes on, and you find yourself in a relationship with a person, but still at a dating level. Um, so you've gone through the apps, you've gone through the discernment, you've done those things. Um, how does the mindful dating practices apply to those times?
Mhm. Oh my gosh, then they can turn into mindful relationships.
Ah,
I love that. I love the two things. One, mindful relationships, and we can remind ourselves that we're never not dating.
yeah,
Like,
right.
we're like, if we're in a relationship, and for my friends too, like if I'm friends with you and I'm not dating you, feel free to call me in right now. Cause yeah, like that's it. That's what I want. It's how I want to show
Mhm.
up in the world. Because when I think about the word dating, Marie, I'd love to hear your definition. I think about the intentionality of setting aside time to do things to spend that time together in some sort of overlapped way.
Mhm.
When should that stop?
When should that stop? Well, I think the traditional thing is 7 years after you're married, something like that, right? At
Yeah, and I
that
think some
point, you're
people are
supposed to.
taking it to the 7-month level, but yeah. Well, we're 14 years in, and
I'm just starting to get at all good at it.
we definitely relied far
Yeah.
too heavily on my intentionality around dating for many years. And Marie, what would you say? What would you add to that? Like, what is dating exactly? Like, what's it for?
Mm. Simply put, I would say it's for getting to know each other.
Uh-huh.
So that should definitely never
There you
end.
go. That
I'm
should
going to be
never
on
end.
team dating forever then. I'm going to get a bumper
Team
sticker.
dating. I love that. Yes, yes. And what is a mindful relationship in the long run if it's not a relationship where people keep getting to know each other?
Yeah, exactly. And that's when Ken and I are talking about individuation oriented relationships. I I'm talking about getting to know each other while we're individually in those individuation processes, which means you're not with the same person. You're allowing them to
Yeah.
grow and change.
Yeah.
There's plenty to do. And you and I have found that to be true. I have found it with other long-term partners. Like nobody stays the same.
Mhm.
Even the people who insist that they are, um, from the outside, that's generally not true. They're
Mhm.
changing. So there's always
Mhm.
something more to do together.
Right, right.
Now, there's one more topic that I really wanted to brush on, because I just think it deserves specific attention, which is dating brings up anxiety for so
Mhm.
many of us. No matter whether you're dating, looking for that one for your monogamous partner, or whether you're dating to really just grow your friendship slash romantic circles. I I mean, I don't know. I'm 46 years old, and I still have some anxiety around dating, and I don't think of myself as a generally anxious person. But what do you recommend people do to work with the obstacle that anxiety can be to this mindful dating process?
Mhm. Mhm. Right. So I would recommend having people that you can talk to about dating because I mean, frankly, I have clients who have seen me every week for, almost 2 years now. And the main thing they want from this kind of relationship is a container to contain their anxiety, where they can
Mm,
just, talk about it. They can just put it in that 1 hour a week where they just kind of unload and debrief and explore also what the anxiety is about and create strategies to maybe diminish the amount of anxiety and confusion that there
mm,
is around it. Because oftentimes anxiety is connected to confusion
yeah.
in my
Yeah.
world.
Yep. I
Um,
agree. Yeah.
so if you,
It sounds
explore.
like it sounds like too that having that could also relieve some of the pressure on the other people in your life who may not be able to provide support for your dating journey.
Right, right. And maybe they do provide a level of support, but maybe they're not really dating and they don't necessarily want to hear, the extent of all of your dates and all of the intricacies of it and all of your shadow work.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask from friends.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think it's great to share with friends and give updates and hopefully be friends with other people who are also dating
Right.
so they can
Right.
really relate. They're in the arena with you and they're also having experiences that you can support them with. So I would say having community around it and also potentially having professional support from a therapist or a coach or people who can just really help you zone into like, okay, like what is this anxiety rooted in?
Yeah.
And is there opportunity to get to know yourself even better there? Like, and maybe heal some of the wounds that they might be connected to. It's an excavation process.
Yeah. I just 100% love that. And I love the idea of having multi-layered support so that you can go through, because you're going to go through ups and downs. And it may be at times you don't need deeper level support, but I don't know. I've gone through periods of life where I'm like, oh, I could use support around this because it's bringing up shadow work. In other words, it's bringing up aspects of myself that I am not currently able to fully own, admit, and work with, which means I am experiencing deep psychological pain. And not all of our friends are signed up for that, nor necessarily competent to do that. And allowing myself to take that on as actual growth work, as my deeper work that's a gift. Like that's an investment in myself and a gift to my overall psychological well-being. That feels like a solid choice. That just feels like a really solid choice. There was something we didn't address that it might be a fast answer. You might just have a really quick answer, but it might not be. So when people are dating and they're non-monogamous, especially when they're new to non-monogamy, I find a lot of people wrestle with this whole notion of like, okay, but if I put myself out there as non-monogamous and I don't get lots of responses, should I just drop that? Should I hide it? Now, I mean, I know you told us to be authentic, but let's get real crisp here. What should people do if they're struggling in the dating pool and they are considering maybe not telling people that they're consensually non-monogamous so that they can get some dates under their belt?
Well, honestly, I would never recommend anyone does that because it will bring them, first of all, a lot of fire. Like once people know that they are non-monogamous, they will be very angry and the rejection might not be very gentle or kind. So, you're just kind of pushing the ball down the alley in some way. You're just kind of procrastinating the inevitable.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend is diversify your portfolio of opportunities to meet other non-monogamous people. So try different apps, and some of the best ones for non-monogamous people are OkCupid, Field. I would say Hinge, now that they have a non-monogamy option on their app. They've become more non-monogamous friendly. And wait, what's the other one?
Oh, #open.
#open. Yes.
Yeah. And what I notice is different apps are more useful in different areas of the country or different areas of your state. So it's worth getting out there and trying different apps. If you're going to do app dating, I like shop the apps because I think that's just like, they're just trends. Because when I was in California all the time, I had much different results than I do in Massachusetts. So it just makes sense to be on different apps. And now it's changed over the 14 years that I've been dating. That has changed too. So if an app hasn't worked for you in the past, it might become an opportunity. And this is where I always give my spiel on like the place I feel people get hung up is they go on a place like Bumble where there is no opportunity to just say it. And then I see largely cisgender heterosexual men just not mentioning it or putting it in a sentence that's kind of down in their profile. So like, yeah, I have to agree with you. It's kicking the can down the street.
Yeah.
And it also introduces a certain level of, let's just call it, I think it's coercive. We're saying, I don't need to be upfront about this because I'll be able to convince you and be your educator. And I know better than you do what you're looking for. And that worries me. And I have seen it play out in some ways. I've seen it play out where people are like, yeah, I actually did convince this person to be non-monogamous with me.
Right.
And yet, like, just the sentence alone, like, yeah, how consensual is that? Let's talk about whether your practices are really in alignment with who you want to be as a person. And then I'm guessing it's not just apps then. We can diversify in our local world.
I would say go on Meetup. There's oftentimes good poly happy hours, poly communities on meetup.com. I would say go on Facebook. There's a lot of Facebook groups that are geographical location specific where you can meet other non-monogamous folks. I would say if you know other non-monogamous people, like ask them if they know anyone you should meet. Tap your friends and communities and ask them to be matchmakers for you if you have that kind of network. So yeah, I would definitely have something else besides the apps in your portfolio of things you do to meet new people.
Yeah, and I would add to that, going to going to there are certain hobbies where more people happen to be non-monogamous, so it's worth thinking about that, and it will be specific to your location. And I know in our local area there is a professional who's starting an all-inclusive, all relationship structures inclusive um dating matchmaking service.
Mhm.
So here
Mhm.
in our general area, and I find that to be a super interesting idea as like the world starts to take seriously that relationships aren't one size fits all, and therefore dating really can't be. We'll have these
Mhm.
other opportunities. And just as a side note, if you live in an area where you don't feel safe to be open that way, then obviously you're going to be taking other steps, and that I want to take that seriously. And that's a larger conversation Ken and I are going to take on in a separate episode where we talk about what happens if you're not in an area that feels safe to be your whole authentic self, because that is not easy, not easy.
That is so true.
Well, Marie, I feel actually really enthused about my own dating
Yay.
right this second, which is saying something because I was in kind of a bit of a doldrums
It really
moment.
does put it comes at it from a different direction.
I love
There's
that.
more energy in that direction for me, like exploration.
Yay!
Cool. Love that.
Oh,
So, how can people find out more about you and learn how to work with you?
great. Yeah. I'm so happy you're feeling that way. So I have a couple of websites. As some people know, I do compersion research in non-monogamous relationships. So that website where I put all of my research and scholarly work is whatiscompersion.com. And my coaching website, where I talk more specifically about mindful dating and mindful relationships, is loveinsight-dating.com. And then I have an Instagram. It's at love_insight_dating. So please follow me for content on, everything from mindful dating to compersion to non-monogamy.
I love that. And we'll have all of
Make
those
sure those are in
links
the show
in the
notes.
show notes. And if you're following me, Marie and I are connected in a few other ways as well. So if you're following me and you're looking for Marie and you can't find her, please feel free to DM me because I will make sure that you can find Marie's work. It is invaluable, not only your dating work, but your compersion work. And I'm so grateful for what you're putting out into the world and how you meet the world of relationships with your unique self. And I'm so grateful to count you amongst my colleagues and my friends. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Jolie. Thank you, Ken. It's been such a pleasure to chat with both of you. And oh my gosh, I feel the same way. It's so fun to be connected, and I look forward to hopefully meeting more people. And by the way, just to add at the end, I do offer free 30-minute introductory sessions. So if you like what you're hearing, you're not sure if you want a coach, definitely take me up on that.
I
Perfect.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, that is going to be right top there in
Yep.
the show notes because getting some movement in your dating life.
Yeah.
What a delicious gift for yourself for
Right,
this
right.
moment in time. Thank you, Marie.
Thank
Thank you so much.
you. Much love.
There's no one right way to design your relationship. And lots of people, actually about 25%, according to a recent national survey, are interested in some type of open relationship. But how do you know if you are ready to open up happily? Not everyone is, and that's no problem. I've got a 60-second quiz that will give you the answer. And even better, you'll walk away with your next step, whether you're good to go or not so much when it comes to opening up. And this is no BuzzFeed nonsense. I personally designed this quiz from my years of academic research. Go to joliquiz.com. That's JOLIQUIZ.com and find out if you're ready to open up happily and what to do if you are or if you're not.